Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Marketing Mode. Today, we're talking about how important it is to go beyond the typical demographics to segment your audience and get the most out of your research.
And I'm Todd Lebo, and I look forward to just spending a few minutes on this topic, which on the surface seems like everybody knows in marketing about segmentation, the importance of segmentation. It's not an uncommon or ununderstood topic, but I know when I speak to clients and prospects, a lot of times we really start unwrapping what we mean by segmentation when it comes to research. And Jenna, I always find that the more we speak about the value of segmentation and how it can help multiply the amount of research you have available to show to prospects and how you can then use it, it really kind of opens up their eyes to maybe understand the depth of segmentation that we want to talk about today.
Absolutely. Speaking of opening up your eyes, I see you have a little new friend in the background there.
I do. I have Baby Yoda here today, and I noticed that you and I were not wearing our customary black, so I felt like I would get out Baby Yoda, and Baby Yoda
Spice
could
up your background a little bit.
spice up my background. Maybe in future weeks, I'll get some of my darker Star Wars heads.
Yeah. Here you go. They're Legos.
Legos, yes. And truth be told, I always have my 10-year-old son put them together for me. So he does
My
it about
son
half the time, and there's no leftover pieces.
Lincoln's getting into Legos at this point, and I gotta say, I've never gotten it before, and I kind of get it now. Like I look forward to when he gets the new sets and you have to put them together. And he's good at it. He's 4.
I know, and they're a ton of fun. I really enjoy
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, they're awesome. So anyway, sorry, back to segmentation. Well, you know, uh, we talk about segmentation or we talk about demographics, or that's why those demographic questions are asked in the beginning of surveys, right? And there's typical ones that you see almost every survey, especially in the type that we do. Marketing channel, for instance, are you B2B, B2C, industry, and company size, so number of employees or revenue in the last year. But what we wanted to get into today was these kind of creative segmentations that you can do by asking a little bit more in-depth questions up front, and establishing maybe a best in class, a most successful, right? People want to learn something when they're consuming your content. And what better way to learn something than to get an idea of what the best of the best are doing in that particular area. Um, you know, we like to kind of talk to our clients and figure out what their ideal would be, and then get to the bottom of what that would look like if broken out into different segmentations, right? What's the best and what's the worst, and so that we can kind of break up the data once it's in by those groups and say, what are the best challenged by versus what are the what are the people who aren't doing as well doing differently. And so it gives this cool perspective on and very helpful perspective, I think, on what otherwise would just be a whole big group of people, a wide general audience, and the challenges that they face.
Yeah, and Jen, I see a lot of times like when we get our results back, you have one question, like you said, maybe talks about challenges in a specific topic area, and it's a pretty flat analysis of that question. But then if you have 2 or 3 maybe segmentations, you could pull out and say, well, here's what the executive team feels are the challenges versus the managers, and you can see those differences, and then that's a talking point, right? That's
And
a
that's
thing that
super helpful to know.
that's right, because I mean, I think a lot of times, and I've used illustrations before of, especially early in my career, when I didn't quite understand what the executive team wanted. And, I'm out there working hard on something that is not as important to them. And
Hmm.
so by me understanding, what they value, what they're looking for as a manager or as an early, marketer, I could make adjustments, right? And I could be smarter about what I was doing, and vice versa. The executive team doesn't always have all the answers. So maybe for them
Right.
understanding, like, how do I need to message this to my
Yeah,
people?
and how can I run my business better? Like, how can I make our work environment better?
Right. So, I mean, you can see here, even in this conversation we're having, we've taken that flat question and now we've added a whole lot of layers of, analysis and a whole lot of layers of, if you're a company and you're looking at, you know, multi, multi-layered marketing where you want to talk to the executive, you want to talk to the managers, and they're going to all have different messaging and analysis. Well, there you have, now instead of one topic, you have two,
Hmm.
and that could be multiplied, in this same, scenario. It could be, maybe by industry, maybe by company size. A large enterprise company is going to have different challenges than a small enterprise or a small company. Um, the marketer that has to wear many hats versus the team. So all these
Right.
different things you're seeing, you're seeing, a month, 2, 3 months of content versus maybe, 30 days.
Hmm. Yeah, and another idea that brings to mind is combining two segments to make an even smaller, um, more niche segment. So, like we did a while back, a report on the use of intent data, and we asked where are you on the scale of using intent data as far as for marketing purposes, and then also how how confident are you in your use of it, or it was something along those lines, like how well is it doing for you. And so from combining the segment of people that have been using it, or using it effectively, most effectively, and also at in almost every like piece of their marketing strategy, we got this like power user segment, and that's super insightful because it's like people with the most experience using intent data and that are doing it right, that are seeing results. And so that was a super powerful segment for that report because you got insight into both of those things. It's like this like tiny little group, statistically significant still, but like this really microscopic group of people that are just doing everything right and doing it at the highest level.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we've seen studies where we go in with a hypothesis of, hey, let's try to pull out these have 3 or 4 segmentations that we think are going to be interesting, and you field it, you get the data back. You know, sometimes maybe it's not as interesting. No harm, no foul, right?
Mm,
you
hmm.
you haven't lost anything, because it hasn't affected your fielding process. This is just a back end analysis, and segmenting the data. So a lot of time, and on the other hand, sometimes you're surprised at the level of difference. So, you kind of go into it with you know, here's what I hope this is going to provide some additional
Hmm.
information. It may or may not. I think, Jen, I can't remember. I think we've always found something, right? Maybe we don't use all of it, but we've
Yeah,
always found something within the layers.
I mean, and there's a level of like when you go through the data, you're like, oh, I expect this certain thing, which to a certain extent because we're human, but the results are always astonishing. Like they're pretty much always like compelling. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's different ways to look at it always, and so yeah, when you create these segments, these differences really stand out. I mean, it's pretty cool. And once you see it over and over, you kind of know, like how relevant it is to how different people are actually doing things that are doing it better, or in different industries, or different marketing channels, right? Like B2B marketers are thinking about totally different things than B2C marketers are. There's some similarities, but at the end of the day, they have the two different ways of looking at things.
Right. And, we always make sure that the data is statistically valid.
Yeah.
And so once you know it's statistically valid, then I always like to look, and whether it be, a chart where you're just like, when you're looking at these segmentations, I always find the gaps interesting. So you might have, just to simplify it, you might have like if it's a question on challenges, and this challenge is at 50%, but then when you look at the gap between the executive team and managers, maybe it's 65 and 35, so the average was 50, but that gap is really interesting, right? And then sometimes, maybe the gap's not that different between different groups, but when the gap's large, then you start speculating on the why, and I know in other episodes we've talked about research being, it's a thinking tool. It hopefully allows people to have, it's real data, it's not made up, but those results can help you start thinking about, what am I doing? What should I be doing? What should I be concerned about? I mean, that's the thinking tool behind research.
Yeah, everyone wants to know what other people are doing in their space. I mean, or maybe that's just me, but I'm constantly wondering how are other people doing this? How are other organizations that look like ours doing this? Because, we don't have all the answers, certainly. And nobody doesn't, which is why research is so powerful.
Yeah, and I remember early in my career, and actually the whole way through my career, going to events, it was always so helpful when I got to sit down and talk to somebody in my industry. And I could ask, and I grew so much by just asking them, how do you handle this? Or what have you done in this area? And, unless people are like direct competitors, typically you can always find people within your industry who will share that. And I always grew a lot by that because, I came away with one or two ideas I hadn't thought about before, or maybe it's a different twist on what I was currently doing. And that's just this research is just a different way to accomplish that. And, you always leave thinking, I never thought about that, or we don't really do that a whole lot. Maybe we should be doing it more. And the beauty of it too, though, is you can then use that research that gave you that idea. You can use that in the presentation or the pitch to your boss on why you want to do it, or maybe justifying the time, resources, and budget needed to take on this next task.
Definitely. Yeah. Research is kind of that general voice, right? For like these conversations that you used to have these personal conversations,
That's right. Because it still comes down to testing, right? I mean, you have to make sure that it's going to work for your company. You can't always get down to the nuance of things, but it guides and directs you. It's kind of your GPS on the next thing you want to do.
We actually we just posted a blog post about it highlights 5 of our favorite leadership insights. So it's the executive perspective from 5 of our most recent monthly reports. So if you want to head over to our blog, please check that out. It just gives you an idea of how special and significant these specific insights are from these segmented groups.
Yeah, and just one last thing I was thinking of is when we have these exploratory calls with prospects, and they have like maybe an overarching idea for a research topic, and when we start thinking strategically about the segmentations and how they're going to use the research and can really start developing that overall strategy, I think that's when everybody starts getting really excited about it.
I
Because
was
then they
just going to
can,
say that's when you can see them light up.
right, because they're like, oh, yeah, we could use it here, or we could incorporate
Mhm.
that into our sales initiative, or whatever the case. But that's why we wanted to talk about, I think, this whole topic of segmentation, because it seems pretty simple at first, but when you start unwrapping and you see all the different layers to it, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, like you said before, it takes what otherwise would be kind of a flat landscape and gives it personality, right? Gives it the brand's touch, whatever brand we're working with. You know, when you can find out how many people feel their workflows are extremely efficient, and then look at that group and say, what are these people doing? Like, how are they measuring this? How are they executing this? So yeah, it is exciting.
No, it is, and you maybe you better understand how people sometimes talk right over or through the other person, because you see, when you start breaking those segmentations, how uh, there are these different perspectives,
Oh
and
yeah.
the only way you can overcome that is by trying to get a glimpse into how they're thinking.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a great conversation. If anybody has any questions that they would like to share, please feel free to put a comment in, or go to, I know for myself and probably for you, Jenna, too, you can go to LinkedIn and
hmm
connect with us, and then we can start sharing some direct messages back and forth if you have specific questions.
Yeah, absolutely. We're wide open, so
And if we don't have the answers, Baby Yoda probably does.
see you next time.
Take care.